Hello, Maria. First of all, please introduce yourself. What's your background? How do you know Hungarian startup companies?
Sure. My name is Maria Sullivan. I'm CEO and founder of International Business Connect, a company that helps international companies penetrate the US market successfully. My background, okay, so I am an immigrant of Italian parents. They immigrated to the United States, and they really just taught me to be a very hard worker, to know that I can achieve anything in life if I work hard. So my background educationally is I'm a graduate from Tufts University and with a postgraduate degree from the Fletcher School of International Law and Diplomacy, where I studied international law, international trade, international business and environment. How I work with Hungarian companies. So I've been working actually with Hungarian companies for years now, helping them sell to the US market. But more recently, I was named an expert for the Input Program, a program that helps Hungarian startups. And this program is funded by the EU. It's just been a true pleasure to work with such innovative companies from Hungary. It is really an honor.
Okay, so you have great experiences and a lot of experiences with Hungarians and Hungarian companies. So based on your experiences, what are the major differences between the US and the Hungarian companies and the owners of the companies?
Sure. I would have to say, first and foremost, having the right business plan and approach for the US market, right? In Hungary, the market is small. So the Hungarian companies, maybe they're doing well, selling in Hungary. And because the market's small, they're selling horizontally, maybe to many different verticals, maybe to everyone to try to boost their revenue within their company. The US market is completely different. As we know, it's one of the largest economies in the world, and it's more important in the US to focus in on a specific vertical or a specific niche. And, you know, people, American buyers, let's call them, right, or American potential clients that you may have, they like this. They like buying from an expert rather than someone that just can sell their IT solution product to just anyone, right? And I mean, take a look at that when you're buying a car, right? You want to know why this car, how it's different, how it's better. You know, if we have a skin problem, we can go to our local doctor that's going to tell us, okay, well, this is a rash, you know, here's some medicine. Or you can go to a dermatologist, right? And if you go to a dermatologist, you just feel better. You feel like you're getting better advice. And so I would just have to say, just really focusing in on the market and who you want to sell to and having the right approach. The other thing I would have to say is probably has to do with culture, right? Actually, I just came back from Budapest a few weeks ago, and the Hungarian companies seem like they have difficulty networking as part of business, and it's so important. In the US, like elsewhere, people have to know you, trust you, like you, in order to do business with you. So the Hungarian companies need to know how to incorporate networking in with the meetings with their potential partners at their meetings. Americans know this, right? They know that 90% of business is done on the golf course. And when I say golf course, it's through social functions, maybe taking a client fishing or taking them to a basketball game or a football game, really getting to know someone. It's just, again, the first step in winning new business. The other thing is, I found that the Hungarian companies, they weren't as assertive with next steps. When they met the right buyer or the right client for their product or solution or service, they were afraid to ask for the next step. You know, it was more like, oh, okay, we had a good meeting, let's meet up again soon. No, American companies know if you're good at sales, you have to set a day and time to speak again. And when you're selling someone in the US, that US buyer, let's call them, they know you're going to ask for something. So don't be afraid to ask the ask, if that makes sense. And to always set a day and time to speak again. There's a saying that they call it ABC. Always be calendared. If you meet a great prospect, a great potential client, and you don't have another day and time to speak to them again, they're not in your calendar, it's very hard to get that call back. So I think the culture is a little bit different in these respects of networking, taking the initiatives to take the next step in sales. And again, the first point of developing the right business plan and the right approach for the US market.
It's fantastic. So, okay, let's say that we have a Hungarian company, a startup, which wants to enter the US market.
Yes.
So, which are the most important questions a Hungarian startup must answer before considering seriously the US market entry?
So I guess I would say first and foremost, they need to do the research, right? And ask themselves, where does my product, solution, or service fit into the US market, right? And to know their competition. People, when you're trying to sell and you're trying to break into a new market, people want to know what you do, how you're different, and hopefully how you're better than the competitors. So you need to ask yourself these questions and come up with answers. So, you know, the other thing I would say is that who do you want to sell to? Sometimes I work with international companies, Hungarian companies, and they don't know which way to market. You have to determine, are you selling, do you want to sell direct to the user of your solution, service, or product? Or do you want to sell through a solution provider, a partner who already has trusted relationships with many clients that they're selling technology to, right? Or selling services to. Now, there are two very different ways to market. And, you know, if you're not selling direct and you want to sell through a solution providers, there's many things to consider in building a program out to work with solution providers. The other thing they need to ask themselves is, can they be available on the same time zone? Now, one of the benefits that we've learned, or a great thing that's come out of COVID for international companies, Hungarian companies, is that we realize that remote work works, right? Someone doesn't have to be in your backyard to do business with them. However, if you plan on delivering from Hungary, you need to make sure that you're on the same time zone and that you're responsive. If you don't have someone on the same time zone, then make sure that you have sales representation in the US that can be talking to clients, doing sales calls, and answering questions, right? Being very responsive. No one wants to continue doing business with someone that's not responsive right off the bat. They say you only have one time to make a great first impression. So it's important that you're very responsive. The other thing I would say that you need to ask is, do you have the ability to scale? So if you get a US client, things are going great, you're selling them technology services, and they want to go from, let's say it's resources, number of resources. They want to go from 2 resources to 20. Do you have the ability to do that? So scale, I think, is very important. as well.
Those factors are really, really, really important. How do you say that? Which are the typical mistakes the Hungarian companies are committing when they are really entering the market?
Okay. Again, I would have to say that they're entering the market too broad, right? They're not focusing in on a niche, a vertical, really targeting a specific market in the US. The other thing I would have to say is I feel that many of the Hungarian companies, they want to target large enterprise, right? First in the US market. That is so difficult to do. It's so difficult to get a sit-down meeting with a CIO or a decision maker from large enterprise. They just simply don't have the time, right? Until they will have the time when you've built a history of success, right? So they should consider other entryways into the US market. The mid-market is a phenomenal entryway into the US market because you can sit down next to a mid-market CIO if you're selling technology services. You can get to know them. You can build a relationship, right? So that networking piece you can do, which will lead to the business. The other mistake I would say is that they don't realize the importance of a solution provider, right? And building a channel strategy. So, some Hungarian companies may say, okay, I realize a solution provider or a channel partner, they have many clients, they're going to represent me, right? They have those trusted relationships with their clients that they've been selling to for many years. That's great. And many of those relationships are with large enterprise, by the way. So if you want to get to large enterprise, it's great to sell through a solution provider that sells to large enterprise. However, the mistake that Hungarian companies make is that they don't have a channel program set up. And this is so important, right? It's different than selling direct to the user of the service or technology or product, right? There's many different layers that you have to consider when you're building your channel program. What commission are you going to pay your partner or solution provider? You need to consider marketing funds that you're going to give them. I mean, they have to pay their salespeople, right, to represent you. There's also the training. You need to train them on your service, solution, or product so that when they're representing you to U.S. clients, they can do that tier 1, maybe even tier 2, understanding of what you do before they bring you in on calls. So training and supporting them, they're all things that you need to consider that are all very, very important when you're selling to a solution provider. Now, when you're selling to a solution provider, it may seem that you're making less money at first, right? I mean, you have to pay them a commission, right? You have to pay them marketing strategies, and you have to invest in training and support. However, they're reaching out to so many more people for you. So I think it's one of the mistakes that people or the Hungarians look at in not giving enough consideration to selling through a solution provider. The other thing is, to be honest, a delusion of grandeur, let's call it, right? Many Hungarian companies, they come to the US market with the idea of, catching the biggest fish in the pond, right? Which is great. It's great to have dreams, aspire, but we need to bring it down to reality, right? There's many steps that need to be taken before that. You really need to get your message out there and build relationships. That's how you're going to build your history that you can take further or deeper into the US market.
Okay, based on your experiences, what should be the first steps of a Hungarian startups which considering to come to the United States? So how can the risks be mitigated?
Ooh, okay. So I hope I'm not being too repetitive here, but to mitigate the risks, you have to understand the market, right? So get some education and knowledge on the market. Now, I know there are many resources in the US. Tomas, you're one of them, right? You know the market, you live here. There's other support offices for Hungarian IT companies that can give them all of that information that they need to know the market. Also to know how you're going to sell. I mean, do you want to sell direct to the end user, right? The user of your service, product, or solution, or do you want to sell through the channel, through a solution provider? Also, I think you can mitigate the risk by not only understanding the market, but understand your client, who your ideal client is. What problem do you solve for them, right? Understand their pain points. That's going to tell you what you solve for them. So, the other thing is, okay, understanding the market, understanding who you want to sell to, understanding your client. The other thing is building a clear, concise value proposition. My first language was Italian, right? So I understand speaking Italian, we say things backwards, right? So if you're coming with a pitch in the US, make sure that it is clear, concise, it's in the right order, so that you can explain what you do right away to people. Also, equally important is your presentation, right? If you're giving someone a presentation, I find that, again, you only have one time to make a great first impression. Make sure that your first presentation doesn't contain unnecessary information like your history or how you got your funding or how many employees you have, right? Your first presentation should be, what do you do? What makes you better and different than the competition? And know your competition, right? Because people are going to ask you that. If you don't know how you're different and better, then ask your clients that chose you. That's going to build your differentiators, because every client that chose you also had other choices. They found you better and different than the competition. So just compile that and take it with you to the US market, and you're starting off on the right foot.
Thank you so much, Maria.
You're welcome. Thank you. It was my pleasure.